They said the bride had changed. Whispers moved like dust through the pews of All Saints' Chapel. From the moment she stepped through the arched doorway, veiled and silent, something felt off. The lace on her sleeves was simpler than expected, her frame smaller, her steps quieter. But it was not their place to speak aloud what they sensed. Lord Rowan Norwood stood at the altar, flanked by stone angels and fading light. He said nothing. He had not said much since his betrothal to Lady Celeste. Warwick had been hastily announced 6 weeks earlier, following a debt settlement between their fathers. Now he waited, broad-shouldered, expression unreadable, as the bride, his bride, approached. She did not look at him. Not when she paused before the altar, not when the priest asked if she came of her own will. Her head dipped in the smallest of nods. Her voice, when required, was barely audible. Still, the vows were spoken, the ring exchanged, the kiss omitted, and when they left the church as man and wife, arm in arm, no one dared question the silence between them. Not then, not yet. The carriage ride to Norwood Hall was wordless. He did not ask her why her voice trembled at the altar. She did not ask him why he never looked at her face. Inside the manor, candles flickered against polished wood and portraits of ancestors. The staff bowed as the couple entered. She did not meet their eyes. Not even Marlowe's, the old butler who had once told her she had a gift for silence. The door to the master chamber closed behind them. He stood by the hearth, removing his gloves with deliberate precision. "You may rest. No expectations tonight," he said, without facing her. She did not answer. He finally turned. Her veil was still drawn. "You can remove it." She hesitated. Then slowly, carefully, she lifted the black lace and revealed her face. He stiffened. The silence deepened. He stared at her as if awaiting the appearance of someone else, as if what he saw could not be reconciled with what he knew. "You are not Lady Celeste Warwick," he said at last, his voice low, clipped and tight. She inclined her head. "Number I am not." A beat passed. Then another. "Explain yourself." She ran. "I took her place. They said the debt would not be forgiven unless the marriage held. If no one stood in her place, both families would fall." He stepped back, the muscles along his jaw tightening. "You took her place," as if marriage were a gown to be passed from one to another. "There was a letter, addressed to you." He reached into his coat and retrieved a folded note. "Indeed, I received it. This farce was her solution, and mine." His brows drew together. "Why would you do this? Do you not comprehend the magnitude of such a deception?" She looked him directly in the eye. "I comprehend it more than you might think. Then you are either exceedingly brave or exceedingly foolish." She said nothing. He exhaled sharply and turned from her, bracing a hand on the mantel. "Do you understand what this means for me? For my name? My house? I have married a maid. You have married a woman!" He turned his head slightly but did not face her. "Your arrogance astonishes me. Your silence astonished me." He faced her now slowly. "Do not presume to know me. And yet I stood beside you as you said the vows. It was your voice I heard, not hers." His chest rose with a breath half swallowed. He did not shout. He did not touch her. But every line of his posture was drawn taut with restraint. "I do not require affection," he said after a long pause. "I ask only for honesty. Then here it is. I expect nothing from you. Not love, not kindness, only civility. You shall have it." They said no more that night. 3 days into the marriage, she moved through Norwood Hall like smoke. Present, quiet, ungraspable. She took her meals alone in the morning room. She answered questions from the staff with courtesy, but little else. She did not call herself Lady Norwood. Not yet. Rowan, for his part, left at dawn and returned late. He said little, observed much. Once, she caught him watching her arrange flowers in the entryway. He said nothing, but the next day, the gardener brought in fresh peonies, her favorite. Another time, she paused in the library before a worn copy of Persuasion. It had been her secret favorite. That evening, the book appeared on her nightstand. No note, no comment. They began exchanging silence like gifts. 1 week after the wedding, Anna stood at the edge of the west garden, the hem of her dress catching in the breeze. Rowan approached from the stables, boots crunching gravel. He stopped beside her, but didn't speak. She looked straight ahead. "It's strange to be in a place you used to clean. Does it feel like home now?" "Number, but it doesn't feel like theft either." He glanced at her. "Because you're not pretending. Because I never wanted it." He paused. "And yet here you are. So are you." Their eyes met. There was no heat, only a slow, unspoken understanding that neither had asked for this, and neither would undo it. The second Sunday after the wedding, the village vicar arrived for tea. He congratulated Anna with a smile too bright and asked how she found the estate. "Unfamiliar," she replied. The vicar laughed politely. "Well, I'm sure Lord Norwood is helping you feel welcome." She looked at Rowan. He answered for her. "She has brought warmth where none was expected." It was the first kind thing he had said aloud. That night, she found a folded sheet of parchment beneath her pillow. In his hand, "You are not Celeste. I find I do not mind." She did not write back. But the next morning she wore a green ribbon she had once caught him glancing at. Just once, just briefly, when she bent to collect fallen embroidery she wasn't meant to touch. He had looked away at once, but she remembered. That afternoon, he asked her opinion on the estate's declining tenant yields. She answered clearly. He listened. A storm came 2 weeks in. Thunder rolled like cannon fire. The roof leaked in the south corridor. Anna found herself carrying buckets with the maids, catching the steady drip. She didn't hear him approach. "You shouldn't be doing that." "Why not?" "I used to." "But you're not a servant now." She met his eyes. "Number, but I'm still me." He didn't argue, just took the bucket from her and placed it aside. "Come to the library. It's warmer." She followed. They sat before the fire. He poured brandy for her hands. She didn't drink, but she held the glass for the heat. "You're not afraid of being forgotten?" he asked suddenly. "I've already been forgotten," she said. "By the world, by circumstance. That's not what frightens me." "What does?" She looked into the fire. "Being remembered incorrectly?" He said nothing, but his hand resting near hers inched closer. Not touching, just near. And Anna realized then he wasn't silent because he didn't care. He was silent because he didn't know how to begin. And that was something she understood better than anyone. He had poured her brandy. Not because it was expected, and certainly not because he was in the habit of doing so, but because her hands had been cold, and the fire had been low, and something in him had wanted to. She had taken it without comment, seated across from him, the room wrapped in soft light and cautious quiet. They spoke little, but they sat together long enough for comfort to stretch between them like an unspoken truce. And then, as if the silence itself had unsettled him, he rose. "Anna," he said sharply, too sharply, "I hope you're not reading anything into this. You're already helping around the house, rather good at it actually. So why don't you make yourself useful in the garden?" She froze, just briefly. Then she stood, bowed her head with soft dignity, and left him sitting there alone by the fire. That was how it began. Anna stood still for a moment longer than necessary. She did not protest. She did not question. She merely bowed her head slightly and turned toward the doors. Rowan remained in the study, one hand on the back of the leather chair, watching her figure vanish into the gray afternoon. He had not meant to be unkind, or perhaps he had. He could not decide. Her presence unsettled him, so still, so unshaken, so composed, it felt like defiance in disguise. Outside, the garden bristled with the season's end. The blooms were waning, the hedges wild with late summer rain. She took up the gloves and shears and set to work, methodical, silent. She knelt in the mud without hesitation, trimming what had long gone unkempt. He watched from the upper window. At first, only for a moment, then longer. Rain began to fall, soft and steady, until it grew sharp and fast. The sky dimmed. Still she worked, her sleeves soaked through. Her hair, usually pinned, now clung to her neck in dark, wet strands. He told himself she would come in. She didn't. 10 minutes passed, then 15. A drop slid down the pane, then another. She reached up to tie back her hair with the green ribbon, and then something cracked in him. He turned sharply from the window, strode down the stairs, and flung open the manor door. Rain struck his coat like needles. Across the gravel, she remained hunched over the garden bed, fingers caked in soil, the ribbon slipping loose. "Anna!" She didn't look up. "Tama, come inside. For Christ's sake, do you mean to catch your death?" He crossed the garden in 5 strides, caught her wrist, not roughly but with urgency. She rose slowly, blinking water from her lashes. "You told me to make myself useful," she said, voice calm. "Not like this, not to the point of madness." He pulled her toward the house. The moment they crossed the threshold, he released her arm. Rainwater pooled around their feet. "Go upstairs. Dry yourself." She turned to leave, but swayed slightly. He steadied her by the elbow. "Wait, your hands." He took one in his. It was cold and trembling and bleeding. Several welts crossed her palms, sharp where thorns or pruning blades had caught her. His breath caught. She looked up, unsure. Her blue eyes, pale and glinting in the dim hall light, met his. And for one terrifying, beautiful second, he was nowhere else. Not in the hall, not in his estate, not in the life he had built out of logic and calculation. Just there, with her. He brought her hand toward his lips, not thinking, only moving. But just before the kiss touched skin, he stopped and let her hand go. He stepped back, straightened his posture. His tone returned, clipped and cool. "Go on. Get yourself cleaned up." She nodded once and ascended the stairs. He stood alone at the bottom, soaked and shaken, unsure whether he had just saved himself or lost something he hadn't known he needed. The next morning, she did not mention the rain, nor the cuts, nor the look he'd given her, as if she were something sacred and dangerous all at once. She simply poured tea, lightened it with a touch of cream, passed it to him. He took it without a word. Their fingertips brushed. Both pretended not to notice. Later that day, she visited the greenhouse. She spoke to the gardener about the failing orchids. He heard her say, "Only those who want to grow should be tended." He didn't ask if she meant herself. That night, he found her shawl forgotten on the library chair. He draped it over the back of her door. No note, no mention. She found it, and the next morning, there was a fresh orchid on the breakfast table. Neither claimed it, but both understood. He knocked softly, once, then again, slower. The hallway was quiet. Rain no longer tapped the windows, but a hush had settled over Norwood Hall like a held breath. Her door creaked open, and Anna stood there, dressed plainly, her hair braided, her expression unreadable. Rowan cleared his throat. "May I come in?" She stepped aside. He entered slowly, uncertainly, as if the very walls might reject his presence. He did not sit. He remained near the fireplace, eyes on the flicker of low flames. Then, with a breath drawn deeply through the nose, he turned. "Anna," he began, "I know I might not appear kind to you." She said nothing. He folded his arms, then let them fall. "But you must understand, I was shocked, surprised. No, uprooted. From everything I thought I understood about my place, about control. You were not supposed to be here. And yet, here you are." Still, she did not speak. "I have been accused in quiet tones of being cold, but never of being cruel. And yet I wonder, have I been that to you?" Her brows knit faintly. "Do you want the truth? I would have nothing else." She stepped closer, folding her hands before her. "Then no, I do not think you are cruel. I think you are afraid." His eyes flicked to hers. Afraid of what? Of being wrong, of being vulnerable, of seeing someone and being seen in return. He gave a quiet, humorless laugh. "You make me sound tragic. Number just human." He was silent for a long moment, then said quietly, "When I saw you in the rain, I could not understand it. Why you stayed. Why you didn't retreat, even as you trembled." She looked at the fire now. "Because I have known worse storms, and because no one told me I mattered enough to be sheltered." A silence bloomed. He took one step closer. "I am not a kind man, Anna, but I find myself wanting to be." She turned to him. "Then begin." He studied her face, soft, composed, lit by a fire she had not lit, yet warmed them both. Then, almost cautiously, he reached for her hand. She allowed it. He held it gently between his palms. "Do you think less of me?" "No," she said, "but I think you've thought less of yourself for far too long." That undid him more than any scolding could have. He released her hand. "May I stay? In this room?" she asked. "Number in this truth, in this beginning?" She nodded. "Yes, if you can remain without retreating." He gave the smallest smile. "I will try." She gestured toward the chair near the hearth. He sat quietly. She took the seat across from him, and in the flickering silence they stayed, not as master and bride, not as deceiver and deceived, but as two people who had worn masks for too long, now setting them down, quietly, between them. She did not speak, nor draw back, when he stood and crossed the space between them. His gaze lingered, seeking permission, not in words, but in the soft stillness of her face. And when she did not look away, he cupped her cheek, reverently, as if she were something long lost and newly returned. He kissed her then, not hurriedly, not as a man claiming what he was owed, but as one who had feared tenderness his whole life and was finally brave enough to offer it. She had never been kissed before, not truly, and so, when her hands lifted and found his coat, and her eyes fluttered closed, it was not from experience, but from instinct. The kiss lingered, quiet, certain, a vow without words, and when they parted she looked at him, confused, a little breathless. He smiled faintly. "It was long overdue." She nodded. "Yes, but not misplaced." They had been married 5 months by then, and for the first time it felt real, not as master and bride, not as deceiver and deceived, but as two people who had worn masks for too long, now setting them down, quietly, between them.
She walked in quiet, never bold, wore no crown, no lace of gold. The world looked past her open eyes, but still she stayed and did not cry. She never asked to be chosen, never dreamed of a vow or a name, but love arrived like the morning, soft and sure and never the same. He called her servant, not a bride, but still she stood there, dignified. The rain He touched her hand, then turned away, afraid the light would make him stay. But hearts don't ask for perfect signs, they bloom beneath uncertain skies. She never asked to be chosen, but still he knelt, and still she stayed. Two broken things now mending in love, love, loud, but brave.